Is now a good time to buy a house? Are your home buying dreams just that, a dream? We're addressing this with today's guest, Matt Teifke. We're touching on how to navigate a competitive home buying market, financing options for young professionals, and a practical step-by-step plan for getting your first real estate property. Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Real Estate Monopoly. This is season 4 or 5. I lost count at this point, but we have an awesome guest here today. He's actually a returning guest from one of our earlier seasons, and I'm really excited to have him on to discuss this really interesting and timely topic. Matt, say hey to the audience and let us know a little bit about what you do and like who you are.
Yeah, man. Hey, audience. Hope you're doing well. I appreciate you bringing me on. And I'm a real estate entrepreneur, real estate broker. I'm in Austin and South Texas, Corpus Christi, and really just keeping an open mind at all times. We have a small development deal that we're trying to do in Kingsville, Texas. I'm in the car right now, but I pulled over and I'm driving to San Antonio to go meet a couple brokers. And really, the vision is be creative, be entrepreneurial within real estate. I feel like there's a lot of people that have similar goals, and we're all trying to get cash flow through owning properties. And there's too many of us that are competing. And so I really believe that there's a lot of opportunity to team up with people to create partnerships, great long-term partnerships, things that you can be proud of, and properties that you can buy that you can pass to your kids. And so we're building a real estate brokerage with that vision in mind. We have right around 145 real estate agents at the brokerage, and we really encourage them to create generational wealth, to have their own brand, have their own team, and to be able to have real estate conversations in an entrepreneurial and creative mindset where you can go meet somebody and present them with all kinds of ideas. And right now, with the market change, it's the first time that I've been in the market where these ideas are actually very much welcomed and encouraged, and people need the creative ideas because there's not a lot
Mhm.
of easy, normal deals that you can make happen with current interest rates. So that's the vision and the philosophy, and really just trying to get around as many people as we can that this resonates with, and figure out how can we go and grow together.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing that, and that's so true. We haven't been in this industry for as long as you have, but it's evident that this isn't how it's always been. Like the high interest rates, there's a lot of changes, and so it's almost like a good thing that we're getting in during this tumultuous time where we're having to learn how to pivot and to be flexible. And I know a prominent investor once said that they learn more during the downturn or during the hard times than the good times. So we're just cutting our teeth at the beginning of our journey. So that's awesome. And you mentioned you have a ton of real estate agents on your team. I think that's so cool. And it's clear that you have this like expertise in the topic that I wanted to dive into today, which is this idea or this growing problem in America where affording a home and first time home buyers, particularly in my generation, Gen Z or millennials, like they're getting to that point in life and that stage where it makes sense to start looking for a home and buy one. But I think that it's becoming more evident that that's a dream and it's not really going to be something that is feasible for most people nowadays. Can you expand on like this problem and just provide context? What have you been seeing in the market in terms of single family residential homes or just like that type of property that's ideal for the first time property buyer?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of challenges with owning real estate. It's not easy. You don't buy one property and retire. I mean, we have probably 150 or so properties, and a lot of them are single family, but over the years they've kind of grown into 10 unit, 20 unit, stuff like that. And it's still a big challenge, right? We got to come up with a lot of money at the end of the year for taxes for these properties. We got expenses. And so one of the things is it's not one or two properties or five or 10 that's really going to set you up for retirement. Over time, those can be great, but you really got to get scale. And that's why I believe it's very good to do that with people. Um, the government is always, if you look at it, the government is always like promoting and wanting us to own real estate, right? They set up these loan programs where Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the rates are cheaper. They'll buy the loans from brokers. They're doing a new deal where you can do 5% down on FHA and buy 4 units. And so the challenge is it's not easy. It's capital intensive, but my opinion is like you got to own. properties. And if you don't, it's like you're either paying your own mortgage or you're paying somebody else's. It's really that simple.
Mhm.
And anybody can buy properties. Like my mom was a single mom and she did it. And I've seen all kinds of people do it. And so the challenge is it's a very, very long term game. A lot of people don't understand that. And I understand why, because they don't really see how they're going to make money immediately. But these properties just go up in value. You get the depreciation benefits on taxes. So you build your balance sheet to then go get better loans and have banks want to talk to you. So you just have to really realize that you gotta be a student of the game, like always be learning. And if you're not owning real estate, I mean, you're just
Mhm.
paying it for other people to own, right? It's everything. It's the parking lot that I'm sitting in. It's the restaurant that you go to. Everything's real estate. And I really believe that it's the one thing that everybody can do and that it can significantly change your life financially over any other aspect of finance. Like I think it's the best by far. And so I encourage people
Mhm.
to take the risk, to learn, to find the right partners, to understand all the benefits of it. And I think another thing is people just they're not educated. And I was lucky my mom was doing it when I was growing up, so I was able to see that. And a lot of people they it's really sad because they don't think that it's for them and they don't think that they can do it and they have a lot of fear and they've really never been able to understand it. And it does take being around it and asking questions, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really have to be that complicated.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. You brought up a lot of good points there. And one thing I noticed was you brought this up. It's almost there's two types of like sides to owning real estate. I agree that owning real estate is essential. It's a key principle if you want to build wealth and really change or improve your family's financial tree. But there's the owning real estate that you want to live in, and then there's owning real estate as an investment. And I would like to kind of dive into both of those briefly. But first, this just kind of came off the top of my head. Like I know Grant Cardone, he says you should not buy a home to live in, and maybe like I don't know exactly what his doctrine is, but like he'll kind of encourage people to invest in real estate, but buying a home isn't maybe necessarily the best decision at the beginning of your investment journey. So what do you stand on that? Like, what do you think that it's important to own the place you live when you're trying to get into real estate, build wealth, create more cash so that you can invest that cash? Like, what's your perspective on that?
Well, I know why he says that, and I understand the concept of it. But to me, it's just a blanket statement, right?
Mm,
And so I don't think you need to own your primary residence just because you should and go buy it and it's going to be the best investment you've ever done. But what I believe is that you're paying your mortgage or someone else's, number one, and number two, there's opportunity and different ways to go about every single deal you run across, and so you can get extremely creative, and you can also find significant value and get really good loans when you want to buy a house to live in it yourself. And if you're finding a deal below value and you can move in and get a really good loan, it's a tremendous thing to do. And I wouldn't personally do it any other way. Like I wouldn't want to go rent a house. Like I am right now, and there's different situations where it can make sense. But when I first got started, I wanted to buy, move into it, get a good loan, move out, rent it, do it again. And so it really all comes down to the deal. And I'm not knocking anybody, but those blanket statements they're easy to make. But
mhm.
if you're telling me you can go and a house is worth 200K, but you can buy it for 140 because they have to sell, and you can move in it and get an amazing first time home buyer loan, then yeah, you should do that all day and not think I need to go rent and not own my house.
Yeah, and I agree with that honestly because like, even my mom always says this where she's had friends that say, "Oh, if you're like, you'll never finish paying off a house if you take out a mortgage, and there's always expenses." But at the end of the day, like ultimately, she ended up not listening to that. She bought a house, and that was in around like the 2008, so it was really easy for her to qualify. Now she has a home, and that's like where she's lived since then. And these other people never really bought, so they're still renting. And I mean, you can kind of ask, like, yeah, you're both paying, and what do they have to show for it? She's been paying down a mortgage that she owns the house, not completely, because technically, like the lender, has some stakes there. But yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment.
And well, yeah, and it's the simplest thing. I mean, it might be too simple, but I believe it. It's that what I just said is like you're paying your own mortgage or you're paying somebody else's, right? And so at the
Yeah.
end of the day, if you're renting, all the all the expenses and everything, they are at the end of the day, they're passed on to you, right? Like the investor is trying to cover their mortgage and they're trying to make a profit. So you're gonna pay it either way. So you might as well make it count towards building your net worth.
Mhm. Absolutely. And you've touched on the opportunities like the government offers first time home buyers. And I'd love it if you could maybe provide some context or just some examples of some options that are available for people that are looking to get into that first time property. And maybe like, is it, I imagine it's different for the person that wants to live in that house versus the investment. So can you maybe explain if what those differences are, what options are available to those people?
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna buy a property and you're gonna live in it, you're gonna get everything the best terms. You're gonna get the lowest down payment potentially, the best interest rate. All of that is gonna be significantly better than if you're an investor, right? And that's because the government, they want people to own properties, right? It's like in the Constitution, like we should own property. And so they try to make everything they can in your benefit. And then when you're an investor, it's completely different. The rates are 1 to 2 percentage points higher straight up. The down payments, now 25 or 20% instead of 5 or 10. And so it's lower down payments, it's lower interest rates. You get to have control of it. You can do this with the duplex, with the fourplex, and then you can rinse and repeat and continue to do this throughout your career. And let's just say you do one a year and you're doing a fourplex. In 5 years, you got 25 units, right? And that's a
Yeah.
big deal. And then all of a sudden, your balance sheet looks really good, and then you can go get a loan to buy a 20 unit apartment. Now you got 40, and so you can continuously compound everything within real estate, and you get the snowball effect. Where I mean, right now we're trying to do a 288 unit apartment complex, and that would be the biggest deal that we've ever done. But if we close it, then now that becomes a normal deal and a 20 unit small. And so everything gets expedited and snowballs and compounds in this business. And to just do your first property, I I understand, hey, rent and invest, put your money into these investment funds. But if it was me and this is what I did and I wouldn't do anything different, if I could buy my first property when I was 18 or 20 or 30, whenever, I'd go immediately buy a duplex or a fourplex. And then I would try to buy 3 or 4 more of those over a couple years. And then I'd have a good balance sheet and a good portfolio. And so I highly recommend that. And I'm sure you get that. I think that
Mhm.
you can do it. Like my mom, single mom, was cleaning houses and she figured out how to save up 15 to 20,000 per year to do it. But it's a lot of sacrifices. And it's back to what we talked about earlier. You're not going to buy this first fourplex you're not going to get these 3 or 4 of them and retire. It's
Yeah.
just,
But let
it is going to give you significant leverage.
no, I like that idea of like I think that's a principle that I've heard wise investors who have more experience give to younger investors is that like at the beginning of your career, you're not really doing it to break the bank within those first few years. It's more so to develop the skills, but also the track record and the credibility. And that's what I think you're touching on is like the importance of building that track record, building your you called it a track sheet or sorry. Mm, I would say so. I know multiple people, particularly my age in their early 20s, they're in a position where they're faced with a very competitive property market in general, like whether they're looking to be investors or homeowners. And so, I guess my first question that I want to dive into um, off of that point is, what would you prioritize? That owning the house that you live in, or owning the place you live in, or should they take that capital and allocate that towards an investment, and then use that cash flow to acquire that home that they live in and they own?
Both are good. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a financial decision on which deal's better, right?
Mm,
To my point of if you can move into something and just put it on a spreadsheet, right? That's really the answer I would say is like invest where your money gives you the biggest return. And when Grant says, don't buy the primary, I think he's right in the sense of like, yeah, don't go pay market value and it be something that, you know, you can't immediately turn around and make money on. But if you're going to buy it and you could immediately sell it for 30-40% higher and you can cash out refi when rates go down, then it can be a huge deal. So that's why the blanket statements, you know, aren't that good, is because every deal is unique on its own merits and its own basis. And could you move in and owner finance it and it'd be your primary and you have no payments for a year? Yeah, you can. And so it just depends on all the intricacies of the deal and not just do it this way or that way, right? And just my opinion is always be looking for opportunities, always be looking for motivation, always find a story of why do you have this deal and other people don't? Maybe it's because you're cold calling or you're door knocking or you know
Mhm.
you found them on a foreclosure list. Okay, now it's interesting. But if it's just, hey, this property just got a for sale sign and I'm gonna go buy it, like that's probably not the one to do
Yeah.
unless they priced it wrong, you know? So it's not one or the other. It's just which one has the most value.
Yeah, and I did touch on I asked you this earlier, but could you expand or maybe provide an example of like a specific financial product that is available to these people who are maybe in like a corporate job, but they know that they want to get into it and get into that first property? Like, is there a certain kind of loan that they could qualify for that you see as a popular option?
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're just implementing this now with Fannie Mae. Is you can buy fourplexes and duplexes with 5% down. Typically, it would be 20%. So that's a really low down payment. Your interest rate's going to
Mhm.
be probably as low as you can possibly get in the market or close to it. And then at any given time, there's so many creative grants or first time home buyer programs. There's ones where you can do 0% down if you buy in certain areas. Different banks offer different programs. So they're always catering to that home buyer, especially first time, because they want you to own real estate. They really do. Like our country would be in a great position if everybody owned their own property. I would think. I mean, I don't, probably not smart enough to really like know the answer there, but it's a good thing when people own real estate, right? And so
Yeah.
it's first time government, FHA is what it's called, right? Through Fannie Mae, that's the specifics. But then there's these different programs at different times that maybe your down payment's 5%, but they actually have a 5% grant through Bank of America, right? They're always some kind of new program that exists. But the core is a government backed FHA loan, which is a lower down payment and a lower interest rate than if you were buying these things as an investor.
Yeah. Yeah, and so something we've noticed, we're in the multifamily space. We're also involved in the single family space as well. So on our like projects, we've seen a lot of these houses be bid up and sell oftentimes over what we were even asking for. And from the home buyer, property buyer's perspective, like it's obviously a very competitive market to navigate. Do you have any? Well, first, what have you seen? I know that real estate can oftentimes be a local thing based on where you are local in that particular market. So it doesn't necessarily like what we're seeing in North Carolina isn't the same as what you might be seeing in Texas. So can you expand on what you've been seeing on that front and also how what tips you have for people? I know you touched on like the cold calling, maybe finding non-conventional ways to find these properties, but how would you recommend someone navigate these this increasingly competitive environment?
Yeah, I mean, depends on the asset class, right? Like I know you look at a lot of larger multifamily, and so there's a lot of people that can buy those and that want to buy those.
Hmm.
So that's probably much more competitive. But with what we're dealing with little 20 units and houses and mobile home park, there's right now
Hmm.
there's little to no competition. Like very few people are actually closing. And
Wow.
so that's a really big opportunity to get with the sellers or the brokers and let them know that you are a closer. Prove it with maybe some non-refundable money, but get a massive discount on the price to what you think it's worth. And we're just like super aggressive. I mean, the simple tips I would give people are just make it very very small. Right, talk to 5 to 10 people every single day, put them on a spreadsheet, figure out how you can add value for them, and over time, find out who's serious. You're going to realize at least in my perspective, that 5 to 10% of the people that you talk to in real estate, probably 5% are serious, and they're going to be people that you can talk to 10, 20 years from now. So find those people as quickly as you can. Always be looking for more of them. Stay in touch, add value for them, and then you all of a sudden you have this database of people that can solve all kinds of problems or opportunities that you run into, right? Like I could run into um, a 1,000 acre ranch, and I know 10 people to call to figure out how to make money. I could run into a 400 unit apartment, and I know 5 people to call, and so that just takes time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but you want these people to know who you are when you call. So you've got to be talking to them for 3 years, right? You don't want to just find an apartment and then try to call Grant Cardone and hope you can get it done. He's not gonna be interested, even if it's a great deal, most likely. And so these relationships are critical. Get 5 to 10 a day, get 5 to 10 deals. Realize that you got to have a lot of lines in the water, and that the price that people want on these deals changes weekly. And so a lot of people will look at an apartment and they'll see the price and they pass, but then they're not checking on it every week. But things change overnight, and so it's a very, very um, follow up process oriented model that you have to put in place. Almost every deal that we buy, we've been talking about it for like 6 months plus. Very, very rarely do we buy something that we just found. And I think a lot of people are, they just don't understand that. And they just think if there's a deal or not, like move on.
Mhm. Yeah, and I like what you said about the networking piece. It reminded me of the Pareto principle, which is, I think, traditionally what it was referring to was the 20% of the work you do contributes to 80% of the results. But I know for a fact, just from our experience, and it sounds like it's yours as well, that that contributes to like 20% of people in any particular industry or sector produce or are responsible for 80% of the deals being done in real estate. And we found a lot of fruit from the seeds that we planted when we first got into this industry, and just like at the conferences that we attended like a year ago or 2 years ago. And those people, even, and I guess this is going to lead to like a different rabbit hole that I am excited to touch on. Even if you're pivoting within the industry, like those people are still valuable. And so if you can bring value to them, or if you have brought value to them in the past, like they're your friends, and they're like, they're not just like one thing, just the same way you aren't either. And we found that like people that we worked with in the multifamily space are now getting involved with us in our single family deals. And so like we didn't have that in mind back then. We were just, oh, right, cool. Like you're in my network, and now we're seeing how we can work together in different environments. I think that's so cool. And you touched on like the beginning, the importance of being able to adapt and be flexible and be entrepreneurial. Like we oftentimes like to use that phrase. We're real estate entrepreneurs because we don't like to pigeonhole ourselves in one kind of one box. Can you expand on maybe how you have done that? You think you touched on it, but can you expand on how you've done that in light of what's been happening in the environment, which regarding interest rates or just the uncertainty?
Well, you got to understand the game, right? So you got to be a student of the game to know how to have these conversations. And then it's fun, right? Like you don't want to just have one solution. So I just over time have really dove in on understanding what your challenges are and what your goals are, and then I just try to present ideas, and you come up with new ideas, and you come up with new solutions, and then you realize anything's possible. So every time I talk to a seller, it's like, what is your motivation? What do you want to do with the money? Why are you selling? What's important for you? And then backing into throwing out 20 solutions and letting them pick. And then they
Mhm.
feel like I've heard them. They feel like this is catered to them. And it's going to be a win-win because I'm smart enough within real estate to figure out any of these options I'm going to present. There's a way for us to capitalize or make money on it as well. So it feels good. It feels like most people don't do that. They want to sell it or they want to buy it. Where we're like, hey, we'll buy 20% of this deal. We'll buy 5%. We'll buy 50%, but owner finance 20% of it. There's so many different unique ways and things, and there's no boxes, but we aren't really told that in real estate school or through people that we talk to,
Mhm.
because most of the time they don't understand it, right?
Yeah.
And there's very few people that really do get the creative stuff. So it's fun, and it's something that is core to who we are and what we believe and what we try to teach. And all of a sudden, you got all these creative, unique deals that are catered for both sides that everybody feels good about. And then you have this niche where that's what's like, hey, you got to talk to these guys. That's kind of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it seems like you guys are kind of not afraid to take those non-conventional approaches and really, yeah, like use all the tools in your tool belt. And from the perspective of that first-time home buyer, is that something you recommend them doing? Do like going direct to seller, for example, to kind of find that property and rather than going on the market and paying market value?
Yeah, never pay market. I mean, we never ever pay market value for anything.
Yeah.
I get it. If if you're buying some of these deals, like I think you guys look at, or like Grant's doing, maybe you pay more, and it can be a good strategy. But when you're trying to build your net worth at the beginning, you have to walk into value.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it's just gonna take so long. But when you're buying things 20, 30% lower than what it's worth, that's a significant value that's going to benefit you on loans in the future if you do need to sell, if you want to pull money out of it, if you need to bring on partners. So every deal I do, there has to be a story. There has to be a belief that I'm buying this almost lower than anybody, or that immediately somebody would buy this from me for much higher than I'm purchasing it for.
Yeah, and so just as we approach the end of our conversation today, there's been a lot of gold nuggets. I would love to provide our audience. Let's say they are that person who has a decently paying job, but they do want to acquire some kind of home to live in, or a property to live in, or invest and use that as an investment at some point. But they don't really have like any practical step by step guide. If you could just maybe off the dome, like provide the first initial steps they can take to do that. Just kind of make that more of a practical advice, real quick.
Massive action, right? So let's just keep it simple. One offer per day, every single day, make an offer. Ideally, make it 20, 30% lower than what you think it's actually worth. You're not going to really, if you're new, you're not going to know what it's worth day one, but just go 30% lower than what they're asking. Just action. That's the most important thing. Meanwhile, every day, look at 10 to 15 properties and understand what the tax implications are as far as how much do you owe, what would it rent for, what does Zillow say it's worth, what does any other website say it's worth, what is you got to have a good realtor. I really believe that. So have someone in your court, but don't put all the work on them, right? They're going to miss opportunities. They might not be the perfect investment realtor, but they don't necessarily have to. You have to be. So make an offer every day. Look at 10 properties a day. Understand what you think they're worth, and ask somebody that's already done this. Find somebody, ask them 5 questions every single day about real estate, and not questions that you can easily search on Google. Ask them questions that you've really thought through. And while you're at it, uh, add value to this person in a significant way, whether that be real estate or something with their family or their personal or
Mhm.
spiritual life, because you're going to see like relationships and the people are more important than the numbers in this business.
That's great. I like that. And I think to build off of that, if you're taking action, you should be encountering obstacles and problems that are unique because you're taking action that you people maybe aren't like popular searches online. So as a result, like that is where your questions can come from. As you're encountering problems, you kind of have that person in your corner to help you navigate it.
Amen, brother. TeifkeRealEstate.com. Hit us up on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook. We're really easy. We want to be accessible to people. We want to help. We want to buy properties with people. We want to be a resource. And hopefully you guys will see me doing this 20 years from now and find those people, right? Because most people, I get all these emails from where I went to A&M and got my master's degree in real estate. And I went back and I emailed a bunch of people. I had like 100 emails and like 40 of them bounced because they're not working at these companies anymore. And that doesn't mean anything negative about them. It's just there's so much change that happens. And
Mhm.
if you're someone who is steady and steadfast and is around over a long period of time, you're really going to stick out.
Yeah. That's a biblical principle too, is just be still and trust in the long-term process. So that's awesome, man. Thanks again for your time, Matt.
You gotta own properties, and if you don't, it's like you're either paying your own mortgage or you're paying somebody else's. It's really that simple.
Mhm.
And anybody can buy properties. Like my mom was a single mom and she did it, and I've seen all kinds of people do it. And so the challenge is it's a very, very long-term game. A lot of people don't understand that, and I understand why, because they don't really see how they're going to make money immediately. But these properties just go up in value. You get the depreciation benefits on taxes. So you build your balance sheet to then go get better loans and have banks want to talk to you.